After failing to conquer the female villain, I faked my death to run away with Lu Nuyen for 7 years. She has never been moved by me even a little bit. Finally, I decided to give up and step back into another world. But when the new target of conquest appeared, I discovered that it was still Lu Nuyen. Extremely scared, I stammered and asked, "How did you find your way here?" The girl stood on tiptoe and hugged my neck, smiling innocently, and gently replied, "You said I'm a crazy dog, so of course I have to sniff it out, right?" Before I died, I made the last phone call to Lu Nuyen. The bell rang for a long time but no one picked up. "The number you dialed is currently unreachable." I broke out in a cold sweat and fell onto the sofa. My soul was gradually being ripped out of my body, in excruciating pain. Today is the last day of the mission. If Lu Nuyen doesn't love me, then after tonight, I will definitely die. On the still bright TV screen, Lu Nuyen wore an elegant and gorgeous red off-the-shoulder long dress, attracting all eyes. Completely opposite of me right now. She stood next to a famous male star, smiled gently and said, "I am what I am today thanks to the teachings of Mr. Ha Hien Nin." She drooped slightly, rarely showing any real emotion. "He is my light." The audience below immediately cheered loudly. The male star named Ha Hien Nin also bowed his head shyly. It's ironic, clearly my last name is Ha. Clearly the person who has been by Lu Nuyen's side for 7 years is me. I once risked my life to work part-time to earn money for her tuition, and I also drank alcohol for her to the point of having a stomach hemorrhage and having to go to the hospital. But at the last moment of my life, I wasn't even worthy of being mentioned by her. I'm not willing to look at the system again. Lu Nuyen's favorability line is still 0, still red as blood. I'm completely desperate. That's it, fate has decided, I won't be stubborn anymore. I was dead but not completely dead. I heard the system prompt in my ear, "You have one chance to live again, do you want to change the target of your conquest?" Even though I didn't understand why I could come back to life, I still chose yes without hesitation. Conquering the villain, I really don't have the strength anymore. As a result, the system gives me the freedom to choose my conqueror from among countless people. My eyes were attracted to a girl named Lu Nuyen. She is still very young, but the difficulty to conquer is level E, to the highest level. Out of curiosity, I took a look at her setup. Growing up in a cruel and dark environment, her nature was corrupted little by little, eventually becoming a crazy villainess. After unsuccessfully imprisoning the male lead, she committed suicide, with an extremely tragic outcome. I was silent for a long time, and finally decided to choose Lu Nuyen as the subject of conquest. Not because of the excitement of this mission, nor because of Lu Nuyen's beauty, but because I want to save her. Her eyes are very beautiful, clear like water on an ice mountain. These are innocent eyes. I don't want them to be stained with blood. If Lu Nuyen grew up in an environment with love, maybe she wouldn't turn black, maybe she wouldn't become crazy in the original. I held that determination to conquer Lu Nuyen. But later I realized, I was wrong. A crazy person is still a crazy person, he can disguise himself but cannot change his nature. The first time I met Lu Nuyen, she was very young. Her eyes were red, she pulled my sleeve and said, "Dear, I don't have any relatives anymore. Can you stay with me forever?" At that time, I was soft-hearted. Just because of that one sentence, I stayed with her my whole life, until my death. During those 7 years, I took responsibility for Lu Nuyen for most of the dark incidents, leaving myself full of injuries. But I didn't pay attention, because Lu Nuyen's favorability was increasing little by little. Gradually, she became someone completely different from the norm. Gentle, understanding, obedient. Even when I was injured, she hesitantly pulled my hand, her voice warm and angry. "Dear, don't come out to help me anymore. I don't want you to get hurt." My heart melted. That makes me feel like all the effort is worth it. But when the male lead appeared, everything changed. That man named Nin is too dazzling. As soon as he appeared, he was like sunshine, attracting all eyes, including Lu Nuyen. She started out like in the original, constantly caring about Nin, asking for news about him. My heart almost stopped beating. In the original work, Lu Nuyen, because she couldn't love the male lead, was stimulated to completely turn black. She imprisoned the male protagonist in the basement, fell madly in love, and finally committed suicide on the day the male protagonist escaped. I couldn't blink and watch Lu Nuyen follow that outcome. So I started to advise her, telling her to stay away from Nin. But Lu Nuyen didn't listen, and her favorability towards me continued to decrease. Until the conquest expiration date, it completely returns to zero. Trying for 7 years, I still lost to the principal in the end. It was ridiculous, but luckily it's all over. I entered a new world, about to welcome a new conqueror. In this world, where Lu Nuyen will go, I don't want to care anymore. I've tried my best. The system begins to issue reminder messages. Your conqueror is about to arrive, prepare. I patted my face, trying to wake up mentally to start a new task. In sight, a strange girl with a noble temperament slowly walked over, smiled and said, "Brother, I've been waiting for you for a long time. This is my new conqueror, Bok Ning Bing." I also smiled back, but the more I smiled, the stiffer my smile became. The eyes of the girl in front of her were blue, like icy spring water on the top of the mountain, exactly like Lu Nuyen's eyes. I felt like I was falling into an ice cellar. Are these eyes of Lu Nuyen? I use myself, look closely. But other than her eyes, the girl in front of her had nothing in common with Lu Nuyen. Bok Ning Bang tilted her head and asked in confusion, "Brother, what are you looking at?" So luckily the voice didn't sound like mine, so I breathed a sigh of relief. "Nothing, just breathe easy, son, then you will know what a festival is, hee." Before continuing to watch the video, please click like and comment to support the channel. If you find it interesting, you can donate to me to help me produce more interesting content. Thank you very much everyone. As expected, the impression of Lu Nuyen was so deep that it left me psychologically haunted. I tried to adjust my mood and continued reading the lines as instructed. "You are Bok Ning Bing, right? You have been adopted by me. From now on you will be my relative." Hearing that, Bok Ning Bang immediately smiled sweetly. "Then thank you, boy." I suddenly felt a little uneasy. Bok Ning Bang's setting is clearly that of a rebellious, impulsive girl, giving people headaches. But why do you obediently call your brother so sweetly? But I try to reassure myself, the system will never be wrong. Probably because I'm skeptical. Bok Ning Bang told me that she still had her things unfinished and had to go back to her room at Phuc Loi Hospital. I agreed and waited for her in the next room. The dean smiled and talked to me. "Mr. Ha, you really have a method. Bok Ning Bang is the most difficult girl to teach here. Yet after you came, she became so obedient." I politely replied, "You're too complimentary. Bok Ning Bing is inherently very obedient." Hearing that, the dean was surprised and opened his eyes. "Is Bok Ning Bing good? Are you kidding me? That girl was smoking, drinking, fighting, her body was full of tattoos, and she was as stubborn as a rock. If it weren't for you kindly adopting me, I would still have a long headache." Hearing this, my heart gradually sank. Something was not right. But none of this setting matches the Bok Ning Bang I just met. Furthermore, the dean said the girl's body was covered in tattoos, but the Bok Ning Bing I just saw clearly didn't have any marks. Even if you have a tattoo, it can't be this clean. So that means the Bok Ning Bing I just met is not Bok Ning Bing at all? Indeed, who is she? I was extremely frightened, immediately stood up, forced a smile. Sorry, director. I rushed out of the room, pushing open the door next door. There were no lights on in the room, the light was very dark. A strong smell of blood rushed straight into my nose. A strange girl lay on the ground, blood streaming down her forehead. His mouth was covered, but he still tried to make an angry noise. The red eyes were filled with excitement, looking at her. My cold sweat poured down like rain. Han Sao confessed his hot temper and his hands were full of tattoos. This is the real Bok Ning Bang. At that moment, the sound of high heels, neither heavy nor light, rang out from the darkness. Fake Bok Ning Bang walked out. She tilted her head to look at me, pulled off her mask as she walked. With blood on her face, she came down to reveal a familiar face with sharp eyes and bright red lips in the dark, looking monstrous and dangerous. That's Lu Nuyen. I couldn't believe it. I took 2 steps back. Obviously just a character in a book, how did she come to this world? Lu Nuyen looked at my panicked face and smiled softly. Long time no see, brother. As she spoke, she nonchalantly placed a chop on Bok Ning Bing's head, with undisguised mockery in her eyes. You left me just to conquer this trash? The room became eerily quiet. I stood still in place, an angry wave rising in my heart. How did Lu Nuyen end up here? Furthermore, how did she know I had a quest to conquer? Lu Nuyen looked at my pale face and sneered. Are you scared? Actually, I intend to quickly deal with this trash to avoid being exposed. Who would have thought that you still caught me? Does dealing with it really mean killing Bok Ning Bang? While I was still stunned, Lu Nuyen placed her snow-white fingers on my lips and caressed them lovingly. But that's good too. Anyway, it's too annoying to have to impersonate someone else's voice. Her red lips gradually approached my ear, her voice no longer had the fake innocence but returned to its familiar charm. Then next, this Bok Ning Bing no longer needs to exist. I just stiffened because Lu Nuyen was approaching. I didn't hear that sentence clearly, so I had difficulty uttering 2 words, what? But in the next moment, a painful scream pierced my ears. I immediately woke up and looked down to see Lu Nuyen still calmly stepping on Bok Ning Bang's face. The strength of her legs was not light at all. Bok Ning Bang's face was deformed in the extremely painful struggle. Fresh blood also gushed out. Lu Nuyen was kicking because she wanted to take her life. I was terrified, and in an emergency, I grabbed Lu Nuyen's hand. What are you doing? Lu Nuyen blinked and looked innocent. I'm killing her. Her tone was so natural, as if she was discussing what to eat today. I suddenly got a lump in my throat. After a while, he regained composure and asked again, do you know what you were saying? Do you have any grudge against her that makes you want to kill her? Hearing that, Lu Nuyen's eyes became even deeper, revealing a crazy and confused look. You left me to conquer her. So doesn't she deserve to die? I was so surprised that my eyes widened. Just for that reason? This woman is truly a crazy person. The room fell into dead silence, except for Bok Ning Bang's angry hum, which became increasingly shrill. She was struggling to resist. She had a hot temper, and now people stepped on her head and was cursed as trash. Of course it's not easy to be angry. Lu Nuyen frowned at the noise. She completely removed the mask, elegantly lost patience, and used a thick cork to grind on Bok Ning Bing's fingers. The murderous intent is clearly evident, wanting to keep it safe. Shut up. Bok Ning Bang was in pain, cowering, not daring to speak anymore. I also trembled a bit. Next, Lu Nuyen in front of me was always obedient. Even though in the end the two gradually drifted apart, her attitude towards me was only cold and polite, never showing signs of madness like this. She's like this, not at all like the girl I've seen grow up, but more like the dark and stubborn villainess in the setting. It's so strange. Seeing me stunned, Lu Nuyen easily grabbed my hand. Brother, you said before that I was your one and only. So why is there a replacement now? My throat was choked, I couldn't say a word. She naturally rubbed my cold hand. If you ignore the blood on her face, she is nothing more than an obedient little cat. But what he said sent chills down people's spines. Just thinking about this trash being conquered by you, hearing your sweet words, makes me want to go crazy. So I wish I could kill her immediately, tear her into 100 pieces so that in her next life she won't have the courage to approach you. As time went on, Lu Nuyen's smiling face became more and more distorted, her madness and illness became apparent. The more I listened, the more I trembled. I immediately withdrew my hand from hers, gritted my teeth, and scolded, Lu Nuyen, you are truly an incurable madman. After all, how did she get here? While scolding me, he turned around and unlocked the door, wishing he could immediately leave this stuffy place, away from this crazy person. But at that moment, a sudden feeling of helplessness hit me, causing my body to weaken, almost falling to the ground. At that moment, a pair of snow-white arms wrapped around my neck, hugging me tightly. Lu Nuyen grabbed my limp hand, placed it on her lips, and gently kissed it. His tone was full of sarcasm. I said you're a crazy dog, so of course you have to sniff it out, baby? There was a gentle scent on her body. After I pressed closer to her, my strength quickly disappeared, and my mind and body began to become blurred. Something's not right. This scent seems to be a medicine. From the moment I entered the room until now, it has always emanated faintly from Lu Nuyen's body. Maybe it was because the smell of blood was too strong, combined with the fact that I was too stressed, that I didn't pay attention. I tried to fight the shock and anger. Bullshit. You actually drugged me. Lu Nuyen has calmed down again. She raised her hand and gently covered my eyes, restoring her usual rationality. It's just a little harmless sleeping pill. Just sleep well, there will be a surprise that I have prepared for you. Before my vision completely disappeared, I saw her give a mocking smile. Brother, sleep well. I actually dreamed that, on a certain afternoon in my previous life, a beautiful girl innocently stood under a flower trellis, asking from afar in some confusion, why are there so many wisteria flowers planted in the yard? So I was busy watering the plants, so I casually replied, because it's cheap. The girl smiled slightly, so what flowers do you like? When I earn money later, I will plant them all over my house. I couldn't help but laugh. If you grow up and make money, do you still live with your brother? The girl hesitated for a moment then lowered her eyes. She said seriously, Brother, I remember the first day you adopted me and said you would always be with me. Under the pale sunlight, her eyes shone with gentleness and sincerity. So I also want to be with you for the rest of my life. My trust suddenly skipped a beat. The wind blew over my shoulder, pale wisteria petals fell on my head. The girl stood on tiptoe and pushed away the flower petals, looking at me without blinking. If brother likes wisteria, then now I like it too. It's very beautiful. I could almost hear my heart beating. That was Lu Nuyen from 7 years ago. I used to really like her, not because of her quest to conquer me. He even begged the system, if I succeed in conquering, I don't want to leave the world immediately. I want to spend the rest of my life with Lu Nuyen. But before the system could agree, Ha Hien Nin appeared. He was radiant like the sun, noble like a rose, attracting all of Lu Nuyen's eyes. After that, Lu Nuyen used her first salary to buy 99 roses to give to Ha Hien Nin. She gave Ha Hien Nin a gentle smile. "Roses suit you very well, Ha Hien Nin." Later, she became the female general manager of a newly listed company, and Ha Hien Nin also became a singing star. News of her building a giant rose garden for him spread throughout the country. But the words of wanting to be with me forever, wanting to plant wisteria flowers in the house, were gradually buried. There's only me left. I clearly remember when I woke up angry. I wasn't fully awake yet. The story of my past life appeared piece by piece before my eyes, making it a bit difficult for me to breathe. At this moment, a hand suddenly covered my eyes. Lu Nuyen was sitting at the head of the bed, gently wiping the corners of my eyes. "Brother, why are your eyes so red?" I was startled. Turns out I was in tears. Wait, I suddenly woke up. Incorrect. Probably not this now. The point is, where am I? Only then did I notice that I was lying on a large bed, surrounded by expensive and magnificent decorations. The cold light gently cast a dim light. Both strange and cold, I don't know where I was taken by Lu Nuyen. I raised my head to look at her. Her lips still had a faint smile, still as determined as before. It's just that his eyes have become immeasurably deep, and no longer have the sincerity and enthusiasm of the past. It has soon changed beyond recognition. Lu Nuyen stood up, poured a cup of hot milk and graciously gave it to me. "Are you having a nightmare, brother? Drinking this will probably make you feel better." "I don't accept it. She can drug in fragrance, so she can definitely drug in milk." I calmed down and looked at her warily. "Lu Nuyen, what do you want to do? I admit that I had nothing wrong with you in my previous life. Is it necessary for you to chase after me in 2 lifetimes and destroy my life like that?" Lu Nuyen's smile seemed to stiffen for a moment. After a while, she spoke softly. "If I said I just wanted to find you, wanted to be with you forever, would you believe it?" Her reply exceeded my expectations. If it weren't for the fact that my previous life's favorability level was 0, I would have thought she really liked me. I laughed coldly. "Do you want to be with me forever? Didn't you tell the media that you were where you are today thanks to Ha Hien Nin's companionship? Now you need my companionship?" "Humph!" Lu Nuyen suddenly burst out laughing. "Are you talking about Ha Hien Nin? She's innocent. Tilt your head. Brother, there's no need to pay too much attention to him. After all, he's already dead." Before I could react, Lu Nuyen stood up, smiled brightly, and said to me, "Ah, that's right, brother said he wanted to give me a surprise. But it seems like you're not happy, so please allow me to bring it up first." As soon as he finished speaking, the large carved door opened. A group of bodyguards dragged the limp man in. That man's face was pale. He had stopped breathing a long time ago, but his eyes were still glaring in horror, as if he had seen something extremely scary when he was alive. At that moment, my cold sweat poured down like rain. All the blood seemed to rush to the brain, and all 4 limbs followed suit, becoming cold. Because that man is Ha Hien Nin in my heart. Tremendous. Heart beating wildly. Out of selfishness, I really don't like Ha Hien Nin. But anyway, he didn't do anything wrong. I never hated him either. But now, he is dead. Looking at the corpse being dragged on the ground, for a moment, I felt really ridiculous. The male lead was inherently radiant and strong, yet he died in the hands of the woman who loved him the most. It's like an unfinished story left unfinished, making people feel extremely regretful. Right at that moment, Lu Nuyen said in my ear, "Brother, it seems you are misunderstanding something. When I thanked the media, I always said it was Mr. Ha, and the person I was talking about was always you, Hakio, not Ha-hien Nin. Her voice is sweet and easy to listen to. It's just a pity that I can't listen at all anymore. To me right now, it is the voice of the devil. Lu Nuyen can actually kill the male lead she loves the most, so is there anything else she can't do? Dead? Can her feelings towards me end so quickly? Because she is basically a crazy person, without any emotions. He is inherently evil. This time he chased and caught me, perhaps just because he didn't want to lose an interesting toy. The more I thought, the more I broke out in a cold sweat. No wonder Lu Nuyen's difficulty level to conquer is level E, the highest level gate. This type of woman is basically impossible to conquer. Lu Nuyen tilted her head. Brother, why don't you look surprised? I thought you would be happier seeing him dead. Anger immediately exploded. I gritted my teeth and said, You're crazy. What pervert would be happy seeing a dead person? Before I could finish my sentence, Lu Nuyen arbitrarily interrupted me. It seems like this surprise is not enough to satisfy my brother. It's my fault. The butler immediately brought in my remaining gifts. A person who appeared to be a butler replied respectfully and gestured to the bodyguards outside. Right after that, a group of bodyguards dragged a group of people in. They were all tied tightly with ropes, their mouths were also sealed with cloth, leaving only their terrified eyes exposed. Among them was Bok Ning Bang, who was seriously injured. An extreme insecurity immediately rose in my heart. I trembled and turned to look at Lu Nuyen. What do you mean? Lu Nuyen didn't say anything, calmly stood up from the bed and walked towards the group of people. She slowly raised her hand and aimed at them. I suddenly noticed that in her snow-white hand she was holding a gun. The people kneeling on the ground obviously also noticed. They were even more frightened, making gurgling sounds. The room right now is like hell on earth. A powerful pressure hit me, making me suffocate and unable to speak. Lu Nuyen didn't panic at all, caressing the gun, suddenly turning her head to look at me and smiling. Brother, you choose. I rolled my eyes. What? The more Lu Nuyen laughed, the sicker she became. Her voice was as gentle as water. I said, brother, if you don't like any of them, I will help you kill that person. Or if you don't like anyone, I will kill them all. I have a strong feeling. If I choose, Lu Nuyen will definitely act without hesitation. I had to stop her immediately. I was very calm, trying to keep a calm tone. Lu Nuyen, calm down. How can you harm innocent people like that? I once taught you to value life, and have you forgotten everything? Hearing the words ever taught, Lu Nuyen's face softened a bit, but still did not put down the gun. She withdrew her gentle smile and said, but none of them are innocent. Brother, don't you realize yet? These people are all old acquaintances. As soon as she finished speaking, she suddenly raised her foot and hit Bok Ning Bang in the face. She didn't have time to defend herself and was kicked to the ground. At the same time, the gag also fell off. An angry scream rang out immediately. It hurts to death. Lu Nuyen, that damn rotten woman dares to treat you like that? The surrounding bodyguards and butlers all turned pale with fear and quickly looked at Lu Nuyen's face. But Lu Nuyen did not waver at all. She didn't even pay attention to Bok Ning Bang but turned to smile at me. Like this, you still don't realize it. I blinked with difficulty. An unprecedented fear and hatred filled my head, making my head pound. I already realized it. Before, to protect Lu Nuyen, I silently endured many dark incidents. Those details cannot be summed up in just a few sentences but are a nightmare that lasted for several years and was extremely painful. Looking closely, the people kneeling in front of him were all familiar faces. There were people who bullied me at school, there were thugs who robbed me of money, and there were people who blocked my path and beat me in a small alley. And among them, Bok Ning Bing is the one who gives me the biggest psychological obsession. She had rude and aggressive red hair, was the leader of a group of ghosts from different parties, and because I refused to pursue her, she got angry and broke into my house to steal all my property. That amount of money I worked hard to save for a year to pay tuition for Lu Nuyen. At that time, I almost went crazy and immediately went to find Bok Ning Bang to get my money back, but this action angered her. Bok Ning Bang directly spread a banner neatly pasted on the arm of the school hall, the most prominent of the school. After Kyo's father fell asleep, he turned around and asked for compensation. Everyone was surprised. No matter how I explained, that banner quickly spread everywhere. At that time, as long as I showed my face, people would point at me. This is the responsible man who slept with someone else's daughter and then asked for compensation. What a money grabber. I remained silent and no longer explained. In the end, he collected evidence alone and sent Bok Ning Bang to prison. But before getting into the police car, she still laughed, turned her head and raised her middle finger at me. Don't you dare poke her. Wait until I get out of prison and see how I torture you to death. This has become an obsession in my heart. Why don't I recognize this name, this face? I suddenly felt worried, but thinking about it, it seemed reasonable. Anyway, in this world, Bok Ning Bang was always impersonated by Lu Nuyen from the beginning. I didn't get a chance to see her real face. When she later appeared, she was lying in the dark room of the orphanage, her face covered in blood, making it impossible for people to see her face clearly. That's why I didn't notice. The object of conquering Bok Ning Bang turned out to be the Bok Ning Bang who always bullied me in my previous life. But these are not the scariest things. I sweat like cold rain. The scariest thing is the system that I have always trusted, unconditionally obeying its commands. So when the system said the target to conquer was Bok Ning Bing, I just stopped for a moment, without thinking much. I assume it's just the same name. In any case, the system cannot harm me. Shouldn't it take me to a new world to conquer new characters? But now why does he let me conquer someone who once bullied me? I called the system in disbelief, but the system was like a moving puddle, with no response at all. I just realized it now. Since Lu Nuyen appeared, the system seems to have stopped speaking. I didn't even feel its existence. What kind of person is Lu Nuyen and why is the system so cruel? Being betrayed again and again by people I trusted, I was so suffocated that I could barely breathe. Your face is white. On one side, Bok Ning Bang was still cursing non-stop, quickly cursing all 18 generations of Lu Nuyen's family at once. Lu Nuyen still didn't waver at all, just turned her head to look at me, smiling widely, or choose him, brother. Seeing my expression, Lu Nuyen's smile immediately retracted. She rarely panics, walks quickly towards me, hugs me tightly like when I was a child. As I slept, Lu Nuyen gently patted my back. Brother, don't be afraid. What happened before is over, I won't let them hurt you anymore. Even though I hate Lu Nuyen, I also know that her words are all lies, but in my heart I do feel better. Walking alone in the dark for so long, my heart longed for a gentle word of comfort, even if it was just a lie. Under Lu Nuyen's gentle pats, my disordered breathing gradually calmed down and returned to normal. On the other side, Bok Ning Bang cursed for half a day without anyone paying attention, making him even angrier. What she hates most is being ignored and looked down upon by others. So, after looking around, Lu turned her eyes towards me. Bok Ning Bang laughed coldly. Ha Kyo, now you are also being taken care of. Before, you were not by my side. I thought you were a very righteous man, but it turns out you turned around and went to sleep with someone else's sister. Don't you feel disgusted?" Before the child finished speaking, Bok Ning Bang was surprised to look at the wound on his chest. Fresh blood gushed out like a stream. Lu Nuyen didn't know when she raised the gun. Her face was as cold as ice, her beautiful eyes exploded with a storm. "Who the hell are you to dare to talk about my brother?" She took another shot. "You can live until now only because I wanted him to see your pathetic death. Don't you understand? The only meaning for your existence is to die in front of him." Lu Nuyen stepped up, fiercely stepped on Bok Ning Bing's face, looking down at him from above. "Trash." Bok Ning Bing did not have a chance to scream miserably. She was killed by 3 consecutive gunshots and died without closing her eyes. In his eyes, only extreme surprise and panic remained. Lu Nuyen seemed to be disgusted and waved her hand. "Forget it, take it all out and deal with it. Looking at it makes me angry." The bodyguards, who had been carefully trained, said in unison, "Yes." The people kneeling on the ground saw Bok Ning Bang's end. All of them were terrified and struggling. They had tears in their eyes and desperately shook their heads, but were still roughly and quickly dragged out. At this time, death was waiting for them ahead. After everyone had left, Lu Nuyen stood next to the bed, bowed her head and looked at me intently. He was stunned for a moment before saying a compliment. "Sorry." I asked confusedly, "What?" Lu Nuyen is rarely serious and said, "I originally intended to deal with all of them silently, but in the end I was still unwilling. Unwilling when I was bullied for so long and couldn't see their end with my own eyes." In her eyes, there was a sincere sound of loss, so I brought them here on my own. I originally wanted to surprise you, but it seems I scared you. So I'm sorry. For a moment, it was like I was back to a few years ago. The girl in front of me cared for me wholeheartedly, sincerely and enthusiastically. Especially, all the people who bullied me, sending them to hell just to avenge me. If she only sees me as a toy, then is it necessary to go to this extent? My heart is a bit shaken. If it weren't for what happened in my previous life, perhaps I would really feel that Lu Nuyen might have liked me a little. I just pursed my lips, unable to say a word. Lu Nuyen stood up. "Brother, you've been through too much today, rest well. I won't bother you anymore." As she spoke, she turned around and left, closing the door at the same time. The room smelled faintly of wisteria, light, gentle and calming. Lying there was like being in an old wisteria garden. I lay on the bed, hundreds of threads tangled. I really cannot see through this person Lu Nuyen. Why is she willing to do so many things for me? Clearly, her liking for me in her previous life was non-existent. Tittle. At this moment, a familiar mechanical voice suddenly rang in my head. "Host. Long time no see. Is it the system again?" My sleepiness completely disappeared. I immediately sat up. "System, where have you been these past few days? Why can't I sense you?" The system interrupted me in a low voice. "Host, Lu Nuyen, this person is not normal." I rubbed my hair angrily. "No need for you to say it, I also see that she's not normal. Her personality changes erratically, who wouldn't notice?" The system denied again. "I'm not talking about that aspect. I mean Lu Nu, it seems like she can sense me, and can even interfere with me." I was stunned. Furthermore, her aura is very strong, it will restrain me and make it impossible for me to get out. Only when she's not here can I come out and say a few words. The tone of the system has rarely been so unsettling. Lu Nuyen interfered with me, making me mistakenly think that I had brought you to a new world and had a new conqueror. But in fact, we have always been in the old world, we have never left. I couldn't believe it, My eyes widened. No wonder Lu Nuyen and Bok Ning Bing, those people could appear in front of me. It turns out it wasn't them who entered the new world, but me who never left the old world at all. So what is Lu Nuyen's purpose in doing so? After a moment of silence, the system said heavily, I feel that Lu Nuyen probably wants you and Ha Hien Nin to exchange lives. Change network? Believe me, suddenly heavy. I know conquerors can rob each other of their lifespans. The winner will gain the opponent's lifespan, the loser will be wiped out on the spot. But this method was too cruel and was soon banned by the main god. Besides, wasn't Lu Nuyen a conqueror? Can she change lives, but also change other people's lives? The system calmly analyzed, think about it, the end of Lu Nuyen's favor with you is 0. As for Ha Hien Nin, her liking for Ha Hien Nin is absolute. Ha Hien Nin now doesn't know why he passed away. Lu Nuyen will definitely go crazy and try to take his life. Furthermore, she can also control the system within a certain range that you and Ha Hien Nin are both conquerors. Use your life in exchange. Ha Hien Nin's life is the most suitable solution. Finally, the system concluded, so she worked hard to keep you here, to please you in order to use your life to save Ha Hien Nin's life. I felt like I was falling into an ice tunnel. Is Ha Hien Nin also a conqueror? The system nodded. Moreover, his level is much higher than yours. You can only transform into a passerby, while he can directly transform into the male protagonist. Both of their goals are to conquer Lu Nuyen. So if only one succeeds, the other will be wiped out. That being said, can Ha Hien Nin and I only live as one person? But Lu Nuyen was able to interfere with the system. Then you definitely know this. But she chose to let Ha Hien Nin live, more than twice. Before, she let my conquest return, almost causing me to be wiped out. In this life, after something happened to Ha Hien Nin for some reason, she stubbornly forced me to stay in exchange for his life. I'm truly stupid beyond measure. When I saw Ha Hien Nin's body, I thought it was Lu Nuyen's doing. But now that I think about it, she loves Ha Hien Nin so much, how could she have the heart to touch a strand of his hair? It was all fake. It turns out Lu Nuyen is not unconquerable, nor is she a crazy person without emotions. It's just that those feelings don't belong to me. Seeing my dazed expression, the system felt a bit uneasy. Yeah, don't be too heartbroken. After all, Lu Nuyen is also an E-level character. Only experienced conquerors like Ha Hien Nin can succeed, a newcomer like you can't do it. Seeing that I didn't react, the system embarrassedly shut its mouth. A moment later, it continued unwillingly, but you are my host. I won't let you be erased. You can't sit around waiting to die. I felt a little desperate and asked, so what can I do? The system replied, of course we have to run. I couldn't react in time. Run? The system nodded. I guess Lu Nuyen still hasn't completely mastered the method of exchanging lives, so please try to stabilize you. But when she does, you will lose your life. So of course you have to quickly escape. I immediately stood up, got out of bed and asked, is Lu Nuyen nearby now? The system replied, for the time being, I can't sense her existence. She's probably not here. I was somewhat reassured, immediately walked to the front door, and pushed hard. Suddenly, the door was unlocked, but both sides of the hallway were filled with well-trained servants. Seeing me suddenly rush out, they all looked towards me at the same time. Lu Nuyen is not here, but her servants are present. So what's the difference between her and herself? I suddenly accelerated. These people were blocking here, so how could I get out? At that moment, a woman who appeared to be a housekeeper smiled and walked over. Mr. Ha, do you want to go out for a walk? I can show you the way. My heart suddenly moved. Is it okay if I want to leave this house? The butler looked awkward. Sorry, Mr. Ha, the lady has instructed us. You can go anywhere in the villa, just absolutely cannot go out. Lu Nuyen, is this imprisoning me? Since it's not public, I can only take a roundabout route. So I waved my hand and said, everyone, stop following me. I just want to walk around the house. As I said that, I tentatively took a few steps. These servants were very obedient, but no one really followed me. That's good. I immediately stepped on the soft carpet and hurriedly ran away. But half an hour later, I am still in this villa. The house was as big as an old castle, with expensive and luxurious decorations everywhere, and endless rooms. I fell into a state of disorientation. I seemed to have lost my way. From the time I traveled through time until now, I have always lived with Lu Nuyen in a small, dilapidated house. I have never seen a magnificent villa like this, let alone known it. So what to do now? Knock knock. At that moment, the sound of high heels sounded from behind. I immediately turned my head cautiously and saw Lu Nuyen standing on the stairs at some unknown time, smiling and looking at me. She was wearing a white bathrobe, standing barefoot by the handrail. Every move seemed lazy and harmless, but her voice made people's hair shiver. Brother, where do you want to go? The girl in front of me tilted her head, seemingly without any malice, but I felt like my head was about to explode. I frantically called the system. Lu Nuyen, why are you here? Didn't you say you couldn't sense her? But what responded to me was just dead silence. This damn system, why does it always fall into trouble every time it touches Lu Nuyen? It's just too unreliable. Seeing that I didn't answer, Lu Nuyen walked down the stairs neither quickly nor slowly. Do you want to hide? A simple sentence made me break out in a cold sweat. I know I absolutely cannot tell the truth. At this time, you must quickly think of a suitable reason. Lu Nuyen walked up to me and lifted my chin up. Older brother. But before she finished speaking, she suddenly stopped. Because I suddenly grabbed her collar. Taking advantage of her not being careful, I immediately kissed her. I had never kissed anyone before, so the kiss was extremely awkward, just touching my lips twice haphazardly and then separating. Lu Nuyen was stunned again. She stood frozen in place without any reaction. In my heart, I laughed coldly. Yes, she likes Ha Hian Nin so much. If I do this, she will definitely hate me and throw me out. So I just did it, not bothering to save face. My mouth full of blabbering. I don't want to hide. I wander around because I want to find you. I can't wait and want to see you. This kind of level should be enough. I took a deep breath. These words even made me feel embarrassed to death. Lu Nuyen is certainly more unacceptable. Tonight, then quickly kick me out. In my expectant eyes, Lu Nuyen slowly looked towards me. Her eyes, which were originally clear and beautiful, darkened, and within them were repressed emotions that I could not understand. My heart jumped. Have I gone over the limit? Is this look trying to kill me? But what I didn't expect was that she actually wrapped her arms around my neck and suddenly kissed me. Unlike my kiss, her kiss was more passionate and crazy. His eyes were hot like waves. I was horrified. My eyes widened. What kind of situation is this? Why is it so different from what I imagined? My face suddenly turned red. Instinctively, I wanted to push her away, but Lu Nuyen hugged me tightly, refusing to take a step back. I also really want to meet you, really want to, brother. I don't know how long we kissed before she reluctantly pulled away. But my mind was completely blank, stunned by this sudden intimacy. The next second, Lu Nuyen came close to my ear and said in a low voice, "Thank you, brother. Even if you are lying to me, I'm still very happy." Lu Nuyen, why are you so sensitive? This sentence immediately sobered me up. I immediately denied it. What are you talking about? How could I lie to you? Lu Nuyen didn't answer, just looked at me for a moment before looking away. So you've been able to get over it? While I was secretly happy, Lu Nuyen suddenly opened her mouth. Do you want to go out for a walk? I looked at her in surprise, and saw her smile and say one more sentence, I'll go with you. But no matter what, being able to leave this villa is the first step to success. As long as I go out, I will definitely find a chance to escape. So I nodded. It was dark outside. Sitting in Lu Nuyen's car, I felt a bit embarrassed. I pretended to casually ask, "Where are we going?" Lu Nuyen smiled slightly, seeming to be very happy. "Let's go home, let's go home." Could it be that that villa is in her house? Or is she somewhere else? Is there another villa? In my heart, I suddenly felt unbalanced. There are so many rich people in this world, why isn't there one more of me? I opened my mouth angrily. Your family is really big. Lu Nuyen glanced at me. It's not just your house, it's my house too. My mind suddenly stopped. What does this mean? At this moment, the car suddenly stopped. Lu Nuyen got out of the car, opened the door for me. Her voice was extremely gentle. Get out of the car. I'm a little confused. Getting out of the car, I was a bit surprised when I saw the scene before my eyes. This is where Lu Nuyen and I were in our previous lives. The familiar alley was old and narrow, completely unsuitable for Lu Nuyen's current noble temperament. But Lu Nuyen still held my hand and together we walked into the small alley. Follow me. As I walked, my heart beat faster, not because of vibration but because of fear and tension. This dark road has brought me many memories, but most of them are not good. I've been beaten here by thugs, and I've also been chased here by bullies. The most serious thing was that there was a time when I crouched in the corner, thinking that I might just die. Thinking of this, my palms were sweating. Lu Nuyen seemed to see my thoughts. She tightened her grip on my hand, gently comforting, "It's okay, brother. Those people are all dead now." It was a direct and rough way of comforting, but with the warmth coming from her palm, the uneasiness in my heart gradually disappeared. For some reason, even though the system had warned me that this woman was dangerous, I still instinctively felt that at least this time she had no intention of harming me. The light is long, the light is light purple, different from normal light. I held my breath in the old alley before my eyes. The wisteria is even more dense than the year I left. It almost formed a sea of purple wisteria flowers under the lights and moonlight, so beautiful that it took one's breath away. Lu Nuyen closed her eyes, stood on tiptoe and kissed my cheek. "Welcome home, brother." In that moment, it seemed like I had returned 7 years ago, to that afternoon under the wisteria trellis. The image before my eyes gradually coincided with Lu Nuyen. My eye sockets suddenly sting. This house actually only lasted 3 years. For years later, in order for Lu Nuyen to have a better future, we moved to the big city and broke up. I haven't been back to this place for a long time. I thought these wisteria flowers had died a long time ago. Yet I didn't expect them to be taken care of so well. Lu Nuyen gently caressed these flowers. "I originally intended to surprise you later, but it seems there's no time. What does this mean?" Before I could react, she kissed my cheek again. "Brother, I've made it very clear." Hot breaths entangled each other, like a falling net falling without gaps and enveloping me. "I've always liked you very much, why don't you realize it?" At that moment, my heart beat like a drum, even my mind slowed down by half a beat. At this moment, a voice from the system suddenly rang out, excited. I finally broke Lu Nuyen's suppression. Its speaking speed was as fast as an arrow. Host, I can only keep it up for a while. Now is the best chance. You take advantage of the moment she's not paying attention, stab me, then you'll be safe. A dagger suddenly appeared in my hand. This is a new prop. You can unlock it. Hurry up and get it. My hand started shaking. I almost couldn't hold the knife. No, I can't do it. It was clear that I had worked very hard to get this opportunity, but looking at the familiar face in front of me, I couldn't make a move. I hid the knife behind my back. A deep feeling of helplessness rose in my heart. Lu Nuyen, you know I'm a virgin, right? Lu Nuyen was not surprised at all. No matter how sudden the question was, she still slowly nodded. I continued to ask, so do you know that Ha Hian Nin is also a conqueror? Do you know that if I fail to conquer, I will die? Why do you want Ha Hian Nin and I to exchange lives? Finally, I clenched my fist. Lu Nuyen, do you really like me? You have harmed me so many times, how can I believe it? Lu Nuyen's eyes were filled with my image, incomprehensible emotions, including sadness, helplessness, and endless sadness. She said softly, I know Ha Hian Nin is a conqueror, I know if you fail to conquer you will die, and I really want you and Ha Hian Nin to exchange lives. Hearing this answer, I laughed mockingly. What am I waiting for? Living 2 lives again, I'm still the same idiot. But in the next second, Lu Nuyen firmly added, but there is one thing you were wrong. In your previous life, after failing to conquer, the reason you were not erased but had a chance to live again was because I exchanged Ha Hian Nin's life for you. He was erased for me. I never liked him, and never wanted to revive him. I took a step back in surprise. What? Is this different from what the system analyzed? Lu Nuyen also took a step forward, full of pain, holding my hand. Brother, would you really rather trust a system, a machine, than trust me? I panicked and didn't know how to respond. Lu Nuyen laughed softly. Huh. The next second, hot color suddenly splashed on my face. My pupils shrank. I looked down in disbelief. I just saw that Lu Nuyen was actually holding my hand and stabbing a knife into my heart. The system was also surprised. The non-stop talking immediately stopped. She gently raised her hand to wipe the blood from my face. Is that enough proof that you like me? Soft nails caressed my face again and again, endlessly attached. I felt like my heart stopped beating. Instinctively, I wanted to cover that bleeding wound, but I couldn't. My blood dripped onto the ground between my fingers, making me suffocate. Lu Nuyen said softly, Brother, I never wanted to harm you. The people who wanted to harm you were always the system and Ha Hian Nin. You are truly a crazy person, lost all humanity, killed many people. But the people I killed were all people who bullied you. In my confusion, I didn't understand the meaning of this line. I just instinctively touched the phone, wanting to call an ambulance. But at this moment, the system let out a fierce alarm, warning. Warning! The life value of character Lu Nuyen is plummeting, about to detonate this space. Please, host, take me out of here immediately. In the past, the system always spoke directly to me in my head, but this time I don't know if it was too urgent or why it echoed in reality. Lu Nuyen forced out a cold smile. It's useless, Ha Hian Nin is dead. Then the next person is you. The system spoke while letting the storm roar. You can go, brother, but you have to stay here and die with me. The system was angry. You crazy. It instinctively wanted to escape, but was suppressed by an invisible force, unable to move. Lu Nuyen vomited a mouthful of blood, not paying attention to it anymore, but gently looked at me. She said seriously, "Brother, isn't it very unfortunate to be a conqueror? Not only do you have to meet crazy people like me, you also have to conquer scum like Bok Ning Bing. Just like that, you still have to face the risk of being wiped out at any time." My hands were shaking, but I had a strong premonition. If I don't say it now, I probably won't have a chance to tell Lu Nuyen anymore. So in the end, I didn't care about anything anymore and shouted, "I'm really tired of a life of conquest. If possible, I also want to live a normal life." Lu Nuyen burst out laughing, but she laughed as she heard me add, "But in the process of conquest, being able to meet you, I still have no regrets. No matter how miserable it is, as long as I'm with you, I feel very happy. I really like you too. How can I not like it? During the 7 years of being together, this intense and suppressed love has long penetrated deep into my bones." Lu Nuyen was stunned, seemingly not expecting me to say that. Her eye sockets gradually turned red, her voice kept trembling. "Really? Just having this sentence from you, I'm dead. No regrets either." The next second, Lu Nuyen rubbed my head. "But even if you don't regret it, I still feel hurt. I don't want you to be dictated to by the system anymore." She gave a gentle smile. "So I will blow up this world, take your system with me and disappear. Return to your true home, brother." I rolled my eyes. For a moment, tears blurred my vision. "Don't, I want you to come with me." But in the next second, my body gradually softened, and my entire body's strength was drained. At this time, I was surprised to realize that the scent of wisteria around me was exactly like the scent of the anesthetic that Lu Nuyen had once given me. Lu Nuyen's face was pale, but she still tried to smile. "What have you just discovered now, brother? In the future, you will have to be more vigilant. What should you do if you meet a bad person?" I wanted to reach out and touch her, but I soon lost all my strength. While my consciousness disappeared, I saw Lu Nuyen smiling at me. "Get a good night's sleep, there will be a surprise again." At that moment, her eyes were filled with pure and passionate love, seemingly still the same girl I was from last year. "Brother, sleep well. Lu Nuyen hates conquerors. Those conquerors always brought with them a machine called a system, arbitrarily disturbing his already chaotic life." What the first conqueror looked like, he no longer clearly remembered. But he still remembered that day. The arrogant conqueror walked up to him, his tone carrying grace and arrogance. "Lu Nuyen, I know your life is a mess. I will get you out of there." Lu Nuyen feels funny. His living environment is not a mess but a deep hole. Lu Nuyen's father abandoned him when his mother was pregnant. Lu Nuyen's mother cried day and night and was mentally depressed. She lost all her suffering on Lu Nuyen, right on the day of the beating. In the end, he got drunk and was hit by a car and died. Such a life can drive people crazy. How could a conqueror understand? Of course, the first conqueror, after helping Lu Nuyen for a few days, was noticed. He began to be bullied by thugs and isolated by his classmates. A few days later, I couldn't stand it anymore and changed schools. On the surface, he still acted nice to Lu Nuyen, but in his heart, he scolded the system. Lu Nuyen is truly a comet, and no wonder her parents were all carved to death. At this rate, I will die too. Lu Nuyen did not tell him that he could hear the conversation between him and the system. I just find it interesting. Didn't he keep insisting that he wanted to come and save you? Why is it so unbearable now? When the system announced that the conquest time was over but his conquest level was still 0, the conqueror cried bitterly. "Lu Nuyen, don't you believe it? I've done so much for you. Why don't you like me? What is like?" Lu Nuyen didn't know, But seeing the conqueror, his face distorted, his soul drained away until he lost all breath, he found it quite interesting. You really seem to have no heart. After the first conqueror died, the story restarted. Another new conqueror has arrived. He arrogantly threw a love letter on Lu Nuyen's desk. I will be your boyfriend from now on. When a new conqueror arrived, Lu Nuyen became impatient and lit a cigarette. Looks like it's the second person. At first he found it interesting, but later he became extremely disgusted. Those conquerors always make the system try to show itself to him, but then after being wiped out, the whole story repeats from the beginning. Dark life keeps repeating like that. Lu Nuyen often has to live in a distorted, violent environment. He could feel himself becoming more and more frantic. Even the conquest level is from level D to E, until now no one has been able to break 0. Therefore, when the story was restarted once again, Lu Nuyen couldn't help but grit her teeth. When the next conqueror dies, I will definitely record that pitiful cry and repeat it over and over again to enjoy. At that moment, a slightly hesitant voice interrupted his thoughts. Hello, my name is Hakio. Lu Nuyen skillfully retracted her illness, replacing it with a fake pitiful expression. Brother, I don't have any relatives anymore. Can you stay by my side forever? This saying can move the heart of any conqueror. Finally, the man named Hakio in front of him was also moved. He gently rubbed his head. I can. But Lu Nuyen didn't think about it at that time. Hakio, however, was not afraid of death because of these words and stayed by his side for 7 years. The first time Hakio was beaten and injured, she hid alone in the room and secretly applied medicine. The system immediately urged, what medicine are you applying? Quickly go in front of Lu Nuyen and show off the wound. That way you won't regret his death. Lu Nuyen stood at the door, heard it, and laughed coldly. How can he feel sorry for Hakio? These conquerors are like wholesale goods. Is there any need to cherish them? But Hakio was a little confused. Why should I make him feel sorry? The system can't wait to hit him. Idiot. Well, girls like men who get hurt protecting them. Him feeling sorry for you is the beginning of the crush. But Hakio did not agree and shook her head. If you like someone, shouldn't you make that person happy? Why make that person feel uncomfortable and sad? I do not understand. The system asked again, you don't really like him, do you? Hakio answered decisively and frankly. Of course I like it. An unnamed emotion suddenly arose in Lu Nuyen's heart. Is this the meaning of liking? Expressing it directly and passionately, without any hesitation, choosing to make the other person happy? He was a bit annoyed, shook his head, turned and left. I still don't understand. Later, Hakio was bullied by Bok Ningbang to the point that she only had half her life left. He bowed his head and hugged his wound, hiding in a corner of a small alley. As for Lu Nuyen, she was standing in the dark, coldly looking at him. He originally didn't like Hakio, but for some reason, at this moment, he especially wanted to kill Bok Ningbang. At that moment, the system sadly spoke up, Host, you're so miserable. Should I give up this mission and let someone else conquer it? Look, you've been trying for so long and still have no conquest. Lu Nuyen suddenly clenched her fists. His joys, anger, and sorrows began to be imprinted in his mind little by little. Even the favorability gradually increased, almost reaching its maximum level. But every time he felt like he couldn't control himself, he had to immediately throw himself a bucket of cold water. No, I can't forget who I am. He is a conqueror. If the conquering team reaches its maximum, it will leave this world. This absolutely cannot be allowed to happen. Lu Nuyen had to try to calm down many times before she could make her favorability decrease a bit. During this time, Lu Nuyen lived in extreme contradictions. On the one hand, she feels happy because Hakio likes her. On the one hand, he suffers from having to suppress his emotions. At that moment, Ha Hien Nin appeared again. Lu Nuyen initially did not pay attention to him, but one day, he overheard a conversation between him and the system. Ha Hien Nin was in the gym, angry at the system. What's going on? Didn't you say Lu Nuyen was difficult to conquer? Why is Hakio's conquering team almost full? Hearing the 3 words Hakio, Lu Nuyen stopped and was walking. Looking inside, Ha Hien Nin was angry, his face turned red. The people are about to finish conquering, what do you tell me to do now? Stand here waiting for the mission to fail and then be wiped out? The scared system repeatedly apologized. Sorry, young master, I saw Hakio conquering for so long and still not completing the mission. I thought he would definitely fail. Hearing this, Lu Nuyen felt a bit uneasy. This conqueror named Ha Hien Nin could make the system flinch like that, and even dare to challenge such a difficult task. The status is definitely not ordinary. At that moment, the system suddenly carefully flattered, don't be angry, don't forget we actually still have another way, it is changing lives. Changing lives, Lu Nuyen's news suddenly increased rapidly. This word doesn't sound good. Hearing that, Ha Hien Nin immediately let out a breath, that's right, it's just that I haven't done this for a long time. I should still conquer Lu Nuyen first. If the conquest fails, then exchange lives with that guy Hakio. As he spoke, he pushed the door open, but accidentally bumped into Lu Nuyen outside the door. At that moment, Ha Hien Nin was terrified and worried that she had been exposed. But Lu Nuyen's face did not have any ripples, but instead smiled gently. Worried classmate, I didn't hit you, did I? The beautiful, sophisticated source combined with the gentle voice like water makes it difficult for people to look at it without being moved. Even an experienced conqueror like Ha Hien Nin still blushed a little shyly. Lu Nuyen still didn't change her face, but her eyes looking towards Ha Hien Nin were extremely cold. In his heart, he already had an intention. After planning, he happened to meet Ha Hien Nin a few times. He discovered the method to change networks but was unable to use it. After all, changing lives must happen between the living and the dead. For example, if Ha Hien Nin fails to conquer and is wiped out, the system can make Hakio switch lives with him, replacing him and dying. Thanks to this point, Ha Hien Nin's conquests have never failed. Conquerors in other worlds only thought about competing fairly with Ha Hien Nin, not thinking that he had such a poisonous tactic. So in the end, we can only die in doubt. Lu Nuyen's eyes became even darker, but now it's the opposite. As long as Hakio fails to conquer and is wiped out, then he can exchange his life to bring Ha Hien Nin back to life, and at the same time make Ha Hien Nin completely die. So, to protect Hakio, Lu Nuyen began to suppress her feelings and gradually distanced herself from him. At the same time, find every way to pursue Ha Hien Nin. Ha Hien Nin was happy, thinking that he had used his charm to make Lu Nuyen no longer capable of being wiped out. So I don't think about changing networks anymore. But Lu Nuyen thinks of him every second and every minute. There was never any love in the eyes looking towards Ha Hien Nin, but instead there was only darkness. But even so, Ha Hien Nin's conquest level is still gradually increasing. Lu Nuyen smiled coldly. Love is clearly the most mysterious and unpredictable thing in this world. Love or hate, unwillingness or regret, these mixed possessive emotions are not things that machines can accurately measure. Therefore, the conquest assessment system is only based on external actions. With just a few sweet and deceitful words, the level of conquest that the system displays will immediately increase. How stupid. But even thinking like that, when Hakio hurriedly found Lu Nuyen, seeing that his conquest level was still less than 60, she was still heartbroken to death. When faced with Hakio's confusing question, he couldn't say a word, he could only try to suppress his emotions, pretending to coldly chase him away. Finally, Hakio left with a sad face. Lu Nuyen clenched her hands, her nails digging deep into her skin, fresh blood dripping down her hands. Just a little more, brother, please don't be disappointed in me. I will definitely be able to express my feelings to you soon. By the time Hakio's day of conquest ended, he and Ha Hian-nin were attending a journalism class. At that moment, the phone suddenly vibrated. It's Hakio's call. Lu Nuyen's eye sockets suddenly turned red. He knew his brother could not complete the mission and was about to be wiped out. But in the end, he still couldn't convey his feelings. At this moment, someone suddenly asked, "Miss Ta, can you tell me, who is the person you want to thank the most?" Lu Nuyen's heart moved slightly. He took a deep breath, suppressing his trembling. I am what I am today thanks to the companionship of Mr. Sinha. He hid his secret love in the words, hoping that Hakio on the other end of the screen could feel it. So Lu Nuyen rarely honestly said another sentence, he is my light. The audience below screamed continuously, everyone seemed to go crazy. Ha Hian-nin was also embarrassed and laughed. At this moment, his system suddenly happily announced, Young Master, Hakio did not complete the mission and was erased. You can completely rest assured. Hearing that, Ha Hian-nin breathed a sigh of relief. That's good. So, finally, there is no one left to fight over Lu Nuyen with me. Before he could even smile, his smile disappeared because his soul was suddenly ripped from his body, in excruciating pain. Ha Hian-nin did not have time to move and fell down. The ground in my heart was screaming, what is happening? The system was silent for a long time without responding, then after a while it spoke up in extreme horror, Young Master, our lives have been changed. Ha Hian-nin was in so much pain that he was no longer conscious, but still couldn't believe it. How is this possible? Who would be so bold? Lu Nuyen smiled softly in a hidden corner, the camera was not showing, and came forward and said, let's go to hell with your system. Ha Hian-nin was stunned, slowly looked towards Lu Nuyen, but before he could struggle, Lu Nuyen was disgusted and covered his mouth. Die quickly. Don't waste my time. I have to quickly go see my brother. Finally, Ha Hian-nin, his face twisted, died without closing his eyes and lost all his breath. The whole process takes no more than a minute. Amidst a sea of noise, Lu Nuyen pretended to be panicked, stood up and left. Sir, it seems like you have a sudden heart attack. Let me go call the doctor. Then, in a place where no one could see, Lu Nuyen rushed towards the place where Hakio was reborn in her heart, full of anticipation, eager to express her feelings for many years. But when she learned that Hakio's new conquest was Bok Ning Bang, she was stunned. Isn't that Bok Ning Bang the person who bullied you? This damn system has no good intentions at all. Wait until Hakio discovers his new conqueror, how desperate will he be? That day, Lu Nuyen finally felt disgusted with this world. He tiredly wondered why Hakio had to always be manipulated by the system in this life. Why do you have to forcefully conquer different people, unable to gain freedom? Why do you always have to face the risk of being wiped out? Instead of letting him live a life like that, it would be better to destroy this world with his own hands, causing that damn system, his reincarnation life, and himself, to become more and more sick, all reduced to dust. So later, Lu Nuyen actually did that. After killing all the people who had harmed him, leaving no one left, Lu Nuyen used her bloody hands to bring Hakio to a new life. Without hesitation, he stabbed the sharp knife into his heart. Looking at Hakio's terrified and miserable face, Lu Nuyen gently wiped away his tears. "Don't cry. I remember," Hakio once said, "liking someone means making that person happy, not heartbroken." So Lu Nuyen put harmless sleeping pills into the wisteria flower, causing Hakio to fall asleep peacefully. After that, she firmly held back the system and then manipulated the bleeding body, bringing Hakio to the new world. After completing it all, she was finally satisfied and fell down. In my ears were loud explosions and shrill screams from the system. Lu Nuyen smiled slightly. "If you can't marry me in this life, then use a brilliant death as a dowry for me in the next life." After opening my eyes, my mind was still not completely awake. It seemed like I had a very long dream. In that dream, due to space and time being mixed up, I saw all of Lu Nuyen's memories. Although it is a bit chaotic and fragmented, most of them are trying their best to write the word love, from the initial passionate and sincere love to the careful and repressed love later. Turns out, he never changed. It turned out that he had always loved me from beginning to end. Even in the end he was still willing to let me have freedom at the price of his own life. At this moment, her mother's surprised voice rang out, "Mr. Kwong, you're awake." She held my hand tightly, happy and sad. "You really scared me to death." Looking at her familiar face, I suddenly remembered. I am an only child. My mother raised me alone. Although the family is poor, it is also very happy. Until one day, the system suddenly appeared, saying that it had been forced by me to complete the task, or else I would die. So I went from one world to another, starting to become a conqueror, like a duck floating in the clouds. Until now, finally returned. I looked at my mother in front of me and finally couldn't help but cry in pain. I hugged her tightly, feeling this hard-won hug. "Perhaps this is the so-called surprise when you open your eyes," that Lu Nuyen said. There were no major problems with my body and I was quickly discharged from the hospital. At this time, right in the fall, in the gentle autumn breeze, each wisteria petal falls to the ground, so beautiful. I asked my mother curiously, "Mom, when did our house have so many wisteria flowers?" Mom thought for a moment and then replied, "It seems like it was just a few weeks ago." "Yes. I heard that in this neighborhood, there was a rich woman who had just moved in and gave her husband a lot of wisteria flowers here." Dad exclaimed, "Having money is really good. I heard that it was because the husband liked it, so he did it like that. It's so romantic." I rarely laughed and teased my mother, "I'm not a child anymore, I don't believe in these things." After returning, my mother is still the same as before, my heart is still full of dreams, everything has not changed, it's really good. She lightly tapped my head, pursed her lips and said, "Uncle said you have to breathe fresh air, so just go out here for a while. Mommy will go home and cook, okay?" I obediently nodded, but as soon as her back disappeared, the smile on my lips gradually faded. Since returning, my mind has only been full of Lu Nuyen's image. I am where I am today thanks to the companionship of Mr. Sinha. I gently stepped on fallen flower petals and walked on this street. Wisteria petals are elegant and gentle. Looking at it, you can tell it has been very carefully taken care of. It can be seen that that woman definitely loves her husband very much. This reminds me of a few years ago, there was also a girl who promised to plant wisteria flowers in my house. She just couldn't live to see that day. The bridge of my nose is stinging. Tears suddenly faded away. Tam clearly saw that I was just an ordinary conqueror, but Lu Nuyen was willing to give up her life for me. The so-called E-level, the most difficult to conquer, why is it so stupid? Why do you willingly give up everything for love? At that moment, a hand as white as snow suddenly gently wiped away my tears. "Why are you crying?" Aren't wisteria flowers beautiful? This voice carries a bit of innocence, both lovely and familiar. My heart suddenly beat stronger. Unbelievable, turned around. Amidst the sea of wisteria flowers, Lu Nuyen is smiling brightly. His eyes were filled with tender and profound love. Long time no see, brother. The wisteria flowers were bright and lush that day, seemingly expressing the meaning of my name born for love.